Hello and welcome to the Newcom Global Group's Staying Global While Staying Home. I'm Lucy Newcomb, your host today and CEO of Newcom Global. It's my great pleasure to have Soren Jorgensen today, who is the former Consul General for Denmark here in Silicon Valley. And I'll read you his full bio now so that I get all his impressive titles correctly. He is a fellow at the Center for Human Rights and International Justice at Stanford University, working with business and human rights. I'm super excited about that, and I look forward, Soren, to talking about that with you later. We're talking with him today in his capacity as founder of Forest Avenue, a strategy firm. And he supports Silicon Valley's European market entry established in Brussels, Copenhagen, and Silicon Valley, with a special interest in geopolitics and helping to navigate legislative processes there, with a focus for US companies. Soren previously did work as CEO for the Danish Innovation Center in Palo Alto and as Consul General, as I mentioned, of Denmark and California. Soren, welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Why don't we take just a quick minute to talk about Forest Avenue? We have a strategy firm that specializes in global business and market entry and that kind of thing. But your firm is also a strategy firm, but a little bit different. Why don't you just take a few minutes to tell us about that?
Sure. Thanks for that opportunity. And you're just very briefly, we are leveraging the backgrounds that I and my partners have in the private sector industry, in law and in European politics. So as you said, I have a sort of a mixed background. I've done international business development and sales for IBM and Danish Maersk Data, established company in various European countries and helped companies with the internationalization strategies. And then I've worked as a lawyer. I represented Denmark at the European Court in Luxembourg, and I've worked as a diplomat, as you said. So I have a background in European politics or in European legislation as a negotiator and as a national spokesman in that arena. So what we do is that we bring that together. I am here in Silicon Valley, and I have partners in Brussels and in Copenhagen with sort of similar backgrounds, and we are really leveraging the experience we have in business and especially in European legislation in providing the bridge and the roadmap into Europe for US or international companies with an interest in the European markets. We can sort of use the network we have to help strategize and implement on that.
Terrific. Thanks. I'm so excited to have you folks as one of our Newcom Global Alliance partners. And I think when the borders open, there'll be no stopping us from really helping European opportunities emerge for US companies. People often go to Europe first and others kind of find it neglected, but I think there's a lot of hidden things, and I look forward to talking more about that with you, perhaps on another broadcast.
Definitely.
So let's drive down a little bit into our Would you please cut that? Let's delve down into our topic today, which is really helping global business leaders to navigate. And I think now that we're into year 2, so to speak, having had an anniversary, kind of where we are at in terms of navigating pandemic challenges as a business in Europe, and how you see European companies navigating that, US companies navigating that in Europe, whatever comes to mind for you as salient tips for others trying still to work on kind of, I guess, would be our second tier of navigating.
Yeah, thanks very much. So that's a lot, and that's really interesting at the moment because we're all navigating sort of tactics and strategies and getting out, but also preparing for what's coming. So there's a lot coming together, and there's a lot of really accelerated learnings out of this that I think are important. Also, as we prepare for the upturn, which is coming. So and as you say, Europe is the natural first choice for so many reasons for many US companies. It's a large market. After Brexit, now 440 million citizens with high purchasing power in organized markets and with good infrastructure and with high digital and so forth. So, and the digital, I think, there is the key word. Europe has been hit massively by by COVID in so many ways. I mean, we had all the waves as we've had here in the US, and they are now struggling to get the vaccinations out, and that's not really going as well as it is in the US currently. So they're behind on that. And the economy is bleeding, business is bleeding, and they have really hit. And what has happened is that we've seen a massive transition to online, just as we've seen here in many reasons, or in many areas. We've taken super accelerated steps into the digital transformation. Europe was well equipped for that because Europe has really good infrastructure and a very high adaptation rate to start with. So we've moved quite massively into an online arena, and that's given a lot of opportunities, and it gives a lot of learnings that I think are really important. So overall, the economy has been hit extremely hard. This is a contraction of about 7-8% more. Wow. In some countries. Yes, very high, a very uneven split. Two-digit contraction for some countries. I mean, the UK being hit by sort of a double whammy, both the COVID and the effects of Brexit. So that's down something 10-11%. Same for some of the southern European countries. Spain hit very hard, but where sort of optimism is much higher in some northern European countries, Germany and in the Nordics. So not an even sort of hit to the economy. And there's also you might also say, when you look at industries, obviously effects have been quite differently. I mean, we've been so there are a lot of things we normally do that just as here we have not been able to do, not travel, we can't go out and all that, and whereas we've been sitting at home, drinking wine, eating or preparing food, and going online using digital services. So when you look across European industries, you have roughly three sort of main groups. All those who are surviving, and that's travel, entertainment, and retail. And they've cut back, and they've been massively hit. You have all those that have had to adapt. That's basically the financial services. And then you have all the pioneers who have sort of been able to really make use of this situation to develop their services. So healthcare, retail, groceries, especially all the food and education, where we've really seen a massive shift online in that. So quite big differences across Europe. I think out of this comes a small number of very clear learnings and very clear trends. So first of all, as I said, the digital transformation has really accelerated. Europe has a strong backbone, there's a strong infrastructure, and there's a good adaptation to start with. So overall digital adaptation is up from 81 to about 95%. That's so really high. And what is perhaps interesting is that it's a much more homogeneous group now. So before the pandemic, we saw sort of front runners, the Nordics, and a few other countries with a very high IT adaptation. So and meaning that is the number of of people having been online or done online services within the past half year, right? So more than 90% for the Nordics, and lower for countries such as Greece, Romania, and some other markets. But there's been a massive catch-up effort. So we are now at a sort of 95% average IT adaptation across Europe. That's important to recall. So digital in general.
That's a great place to start. And I have to say that of all our guests, that's becoming a clear, one of the few global trends is A, massive disruption, and B, accelerated digital transformation. So thanks for sharing that. It really is an around the world exciting, I mean, sort of silver lining, exciting time.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more granularly about conversations you're having with potential clients, partners, etc., about specific tips that people are doing to navigate beyond digital. Of course, every industry probably has their own little, I don't want to say tricks because that sounds devious, but let's just say hacks in Silicon Valley language, let's say hacks and workarounds about how to navigate pandemic challenges, such as not leaving the house. What are you seeing for, Europeans tend to be more, and this is grossly general, more subdued than Americans. And, is this sort of forcing some new cultural norms?
Yes, certainly, and I think there are quite a few takeaways from the way we've sort of managed the pandemic that are important going forward. And I think it drives, and they're really important learnings, because much of what we have learned here will bring with us as we go forward, I'm sure. And as you say, so sort of empathy and the personal approach have definitely become more important in relation. So I think overall, as any shift towards digital, we are seeing sort of trends that drive shorter time to market. There's a lower lead cost, and probably also a much higher churn, because people are sitting at home and having time to explore market opportunities and other opportunities than what they're looking at. So I think there are three sort of important trends out of this. One is personalization. We need to focus much more strongly on the sort of the individual customer relation and personalize. So that means connecting data science, sales, marketing, customer experiences across. A much stronger focus on customer care. It's all gone online, and ensuring that works through apps and tracking and whatever, depending on if you're in B2C or B2B. And then I think the third really important trend is realizing agility and the powers of that. We need to react faster, and we need to make to that we need to have flatter structures and flatter organizations in the way we work, and that's definitely true, or the case also in Europe. But I think I think very strongly a much more empathetic approach. As we've seen in local dialogues here, we are working from home, and that means that once in a while kids will emerge in the background, or the dog will make a noise. We are a little bit closer, and that's important to remember also in business relations, and it presents enormous opportunities. And certainly the dialogue in Europe is definitely open to that kind of relation building. And then I think we are seeing a shift from strategy to tactical approaches. Less focus on the big sort of strategic frames, much more on tactical operations, developing narratives, and focusing on building that personal connection. And I think that's really important as we prepare for the upturn, which is coming just around the corner. So use that basis to build your pipeline, your relations, and all you need as you're coming out of the pandemic.
Is there any particular approach? I appreciated that you talked about empathy. Have you noticed that as a specific example with any customer, or even a company in Europe, or even your own company? Are you noticing any particular insight that we might take?
But I think it's really a general sort of strong trend. We are all sharing this together, and that provides a frame. We know that it presents a lot of pressure. And that pressure is closer to many business decisions. CEOs of large corporations are even sitting in their basements and with a dog coming in once in a while. We are all sort of a little bit part of that, and it makes it possible to sort of accelerate the personal contact and the personal approach, if you understand that you need to add a little bit perhaps of yourself, and a little bit of empathy into the relation, and also showing that you understand the situation that your contact or your customer is in, and certainly true for Europe. A lot of the countries have really been hit, and have been sitting in lockdown in very long, and they're all preparing for the uptrend. So they're all looking at preparing their business operations for when we get out.
Yes, we're starting a new, well, actually, we're reigniting our blog about that, about readying for return, because I think, this could actually be a preparation time. A lot of us, kind of in responsive mode, but this could really be a great planning time while we're still finishing up the lockdown piece.
Yes. In many ways, we've learned to be better online. We've learned to be better digital. And we've learned to be better in communication and in focusing and personalizing the communication much more than we did before. And that's important learning that are relevant to take with us as we go forward.
I really agree with you, and I think you have surfaced our final question, which is, what are the hidden silver linings and unintended consequences of opportunity that might not have been here before? And you've mentioned digital transformation acceleration, and you've mentioned increased empathy, and I'll paraphrase that also, customer intimacy. And are there any other, I mean, those are pretty big just on their own, but are there any additions you'd like to make to that list of things that might not have happened without the pandemic or these conditions?
Yeah. But I think there are quite many, and that there are really many important realizations that we have from this. And I think so organizationally, and I think that's important for anyone going international. We have realized the power of distributed teams. And that's how we've worked through the pandemic. Right? We've been working from home, and we've been working in suddenly we've been working in distributed organizations. So we've learned a lot about organization and about sort of management in that kind of setting. And I think that is extremely relevant for any company or any organization that's going abroad or international, because that's how you work, and that's the means to provide sort of agility. So apart from the sort of all the learnings about online and how we can be better online, I mean, there's that organizational learning, and then there are quite a few, I think, really important realizations coming out of the pandemic. Of course,
because sorry, go ahead.
No, sir. No, it's just have to say that, I mean, the whole sustainable agenda and a lot of those sort of more value-driven agendas have emerged as really important to focus on. I mean, obviously a lot of companies have had to focus on liquidity and so forth, but there's also, and there's still through it all, the realization that we saw before the pandemic, that we need to focus on climate and that host of important agendas. And it seems that across Europe they have grown very strongly. I mean, there's a strong focus on green recovery, and there's a strong focus on how you position yourself in the market, what you give to society, and how you relate to some of those social questions. We see it in a lot of the legislation that's coming out of Europe, digital responsibility and so forth. And I think that's really important to focus on, and that has been accelerated through the pandemic.
Yes, and actually the timing is so both ironic and imperative, because we had this off the agenda here for 4 years, as you know. And with the pandemic, one tends to be very present oriented and somewhat fatalistic at times, and climate change, although dire and absolutely a call to action, it gives one the sense to contemplate a future, which not everyone has had. The possibility of future has been dim on some days for some. And so, although climate change is by no means an upper, it's definitely a call forward. And I think that, ironically, I wish it hadn't been off the agenda for 4 years, but if it's going to come back, this is perfect timing and gives us, I think, also an anchor towards the future. It's a little bit disconcerting having been in lockdown for many businesses as well as individuals, and so we're starting to see these pinpoints on the map, if you like, of where to next. And so thank you for surfacing that. That's a very subtle but quite profound point, and so thank you for that. Soren, we're so grateful to have had you on this episode today, and if everybody will just hang on for a moment, you'll see Soren and my contact details on the next slide. Again, this is Lucy Newcomb, CEO of Newcomb Global. We handle market entry, global leadership, global business development. Together with Soren Jorgensen from Forest Avenue. Please hang on for our details, and thank you so much for joining us. See you next month. I look forward to contact strategy conversations. Soren, thanks again.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for inviting, and thanks for an interesting conversation.
It was indeed. Thanks again. Goodbye, everyone. Bye, Soren.
Bye.